All right.
Okay. And there is editing capability, so I'll edit out the beginning. We got to sit right next to each other, though, so we're both. There we go.
You mean to move in this way?
This is perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Well, hello, IRLS 521 students. Once again, we're bringing you a talk by an expert in an area of children's or young adult literature, and I'd like to introduce Marc Mason to you today. Marc is a self-proclaimed library dork. He's also a professor here. He works with freshman students, and he does library instruction on a Tempe campus of the Arizona State University Libraries. But we're here to talk to him today about his, I would say it's your avocation, really. I mean, this is where your heart's at, is the world of comics and graphic novels and doing all that stuff. And so that's why we're here today, to talk about comics and graphic novels. So Marc, with that, would you like to say a little bit about yourself and all that good stuff?
Sure, thanks. Happy to be here. As she said, I suspect this is my avocation. I started reading comic books when I was about 4 years old. I would have family bring them home. I've basically read them my entire life since. In 2001, I started writing about them online. In 2002 or 2003, I started writing for a website owned by filmmaker Kevin Smith, who's one of the most famous geeks alive. And I wrote for him for 3 years. And then after that, I started my own site. And I've been running that ever since as a solo project with other writers and in various forms. And I'm basically out there trying to find the best in comics, which is not always easy, and tell people about it. And that's what I hope to do.
Cool. And so your website is comicswaitingroom.com, and one of the assignments for the week is to take a look at Marc's site, see what you think, and use some evidence from his site in your discussion board posts along with your other readings. So let's talk about comics. I see you have an array of comics and graphic novels in front of you. I guess the first question I have is are comics and graphic novels a genre, or are they a medium? What do you think?
Comics and graphic novels are a medium. There is no question about that. They're a medium with a number of genres in it. Comics and graphic novels are no different than any other artistic medium. If you call yourself an artist, you could be a painter or a sculptor.
Or a novelist.
Or a novelist, or a memoirist, if you're a writer. Every medium has its own different genres. What happens with comics and graphic novels is that too often they get pigeonholed as something that's about people wearing capes.
Right.
That is not the case, and that's one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for the medium, is because I want people to know what comics and graphic novels really are and what they're really all about.
So they've really been popularized, like you said, people in capes. So when you think of comics or graphic novels, maybe what immediately comes to mind is something like Spider-Man or Batman or the Fantastic Four. But I see in front of you, it looks like you've got a nonfiction graphic novel, or a nonfiction. It's not a novel because it's nonfiction, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
It looks like you've got some examples from cultures other than the United States, or countries other than the United States. Some science fiction.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean,
yeah.
so I think that's so. There can be historical fiction, right? Contemporary.
Absolutely.
All that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Huh? You take a book like The Photographer, which I show. This is an award-winning piece. It's something different and unusual. It takes thousands of photos shot by a photographer who accompanied doctors across borders in Afghanistan many years back, and intersperses them with a graphic narrative telling this person's story as he journeys through the mountains illegally into Afghanistan with doctors, the perils that they faced, the threats, the people that he met, and it's a way of, at this time, still getting a contemporary idea of what our own military and our own service personnel are facing in that region of the world today. Whereas, of course, you get the standard Marvel comic, X Factor, superheroes, still a perfect example of a graphic novel. Comics and graphic novels can bring you the world. They can bring you the world. The Photographer is a French production translated into English. Manga, and if you are going to work in a library and you're going to be working with graphic novels, you will work with manga. They're translated from the Korean, from the Japanese, from the Chinese, and of course only the Japanese are technically manga. The others have different names.
And what's special about these books?
What's special about
the format?
What's special about these in the format? First and foremost, a book like this one, Notame Cantabile, this is my personal favorite manga. It reads right to left in the way that the book is originally printed. This book is about orchestral students. Cool. It's not about people in costumes or people with swords. It's technically what you would call a shoujo manga, which in the Japanese they call it a girls manga, but it's perfect for everybody. If you're a fan of good stories, you would find that. On the other hand, in a book like Rebirth, swords, vampires, fights, something called shonen is that classification, and you get the standard stuff. So it's the variety that makes comics and graphic novels so exciting to me.
So a lot of people think that a comic or a graphic novel is some pictures with some words, and you just kind of read it, and it's really easy, and this is the kind of literature that you don't want kids to read. You want kids to read more sophisticated stuff. You hear that a lot. You hear that from teachers. Sometimes you hear it from parents. All my kid reads are comics. All my kid reads are graphic novels. So my question to you is, can a comic or graphic novel be just as sophisticated as a novel in prose?
It absolutely can. I haven't read a book more sophisticated in the last 5 years in any format than The Photographer. Or if you take a science fiction book like Orbiter, written by a gentleman named Warren Ellis, who's written for television. He's written novels. It's a very sophisticated book. It's research-based science fiction. It's not impossible to learn something from a comic or a graphic novel, just like you would from any other type of book.
So you're telling me that kids reading this stuff, it's not going to make them stupider?
It's not going to make them dumber in any case. No. In fact, when you're getting to the material where you're learning about other cultures, it can actually make you a lot smarter. I know as a kid, when I would read, your classic 32-page paper floppy comics, I would occasionally, here and there, bump into words that I didn't understand or concepts, and that sent me to the library because I wanted to understand what I was reading. And I think kids do take that as a challenge. They don't want anybody to have a leg up on them. So if they do come across a concept or something that they don't understand, they will learn about it on their own. And they'll learn about it on their own because they enjoyed learning about it initially through a comic or a graphic novel.
Cool. All right, so I see you have Buffy the Vampire Slayer in front of you.
Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 8. If you were a fan of the show, created by Joss Whedon, the show was discontinued. And it took a few years away. And Whedon went to Dark Horse Comics, where they had published Buffy comics before, and they fashioned a Season 8 of the series, but in comic book form. It's written by him. It's written by other writers who worked for the show, and it's about as official of a continuation as you can get. And I think the link that you get here, Anne, is the way that comics have insinuated themselves into mainstream popular culture.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting and unique about it.
Right, because this is a crossover piece.
It's a massive crossover piece.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that, how ideas from comics and graphic novels get into other media and vice versa.
Well, I think what we've seen in comics over the last 30 years is a cyclical nature where something about comics and graphic novels will put itself into the center of pop culture, but now it's learned how to stay. In the 80s, we had Art Spiegelman's Mouse,
yes,
which was a Holocaust memoir of his father's experiences in Auschwitz.
And won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, and between that and The Watchmen, which of course was also recently a motion picture, and Frank Miller's Dark Knight, the Batman of the future, comics experienced a resurgence in the mid to late 80s of popular interest, and then it waned a bit. And then in the 1990s, comics went